Okay, right. So, okay, and we are here for our third discussion of Dune, and we will discuss the book and the film. Full spoilers, so that everybody knows about that as well. And I have with me again Varsha from Reading by the Rainy Mountain, Philip Chase from the channel Philip Chase, Matt from Matt on Books, Carl Albert, author and screenwriter, and Jarrod from the Fantasy Thinker. Welcome, everybody, and also welcome to everybody who's watching and in the chat. Okay. Yeah, let's get the film thing out of the way. I think we're probably itching to talk about the film. What do we make of the film?
You say get it out of the way as if we're going to talk about it for 5 minutes and be done.
I have nothing else scheduled today, so I'm good. But you're also an hour ahead of me. You're at the outer end of the evening end of the time
zones. I'm used to it.
So, whereas for the Americans, it's, I don't know, early afternoon. For Varsha, it's still morning.
Good morning.
I just woke up, so I can be here all day.
We have all the time in the world here. I really liked the film. I like the visuals of the film, really. I mean, there were
spectacular visuals.
Yeah. I had probably possibly amongst us the most complicated response to the film.
You want to talk about that?
I went to see it with my best friend, who is a huge Dune fan. He worked on the Dune role-playing game. He has been in contact with the Herbert Foundation. He knows everything about Dune, and he and I were just like, whoa, totally fanboy excited. The night before, we watched the first movie again at my place. I have a big TV, and then we went to see it, and we walked out afterwards, and we were like, yeah, it was pretty good. And I'm still a little confused about why. I need to go see it again. But visually, like you said, Angela, it's stunning. Just like the first film. No question. It's just like, it's action cinema, top 10. It's like visuals, top 10, no question.
Was it the changes?
Yeah, the more I think about it, the more there were certain changes in it that I am super not on board with, or at least conflicted about. You know?
Yeah, there's certainly some changes where I also think it takes a bit away from the complexity of the book. The book is much more complex and also much more unconventional in some respects than the film. So I definitely get that you say you might be conflicted about some of those changes.
Yeah, and I mean I kind of understand, because I think also Denis is in a really weird position, because there isn't guaranteed going to be a Dune Messiah film. Like, going into this, he was already having some people work on writing a Dune Messiah film, but he doesn't have a contract for it. Like, it has not been signed that there is going to be a third film. So I can imagine him, it felt like he was maybe pulling as much as he could maybe from Messiah into the movie, or at least some of the meaning or feeling or whatever of Messiah.
The tone, for sure.
Yeah, a lot of the tone.
He's spoken to that and talked about how, Frank Herbert, I think famously, partially wrote Messiah because of the response a lot of people had.
Because people didn't get Dune.
Yeah, they didn't get it. Right, exactly. Yeah. And so Denis wanted to make it more explicit than it was in the book. It's kind of a warning against, these charismatic leaders. And
I saw that interview with him, and then I was like, that makes sense. I'm not sure I like it that much as a Dune fan, but I understand,
The other source of change in the film is the compression of time. Right. Which is why certain characters. So in the book, as we know, that most of you just finished reading, years go by from the time that Paul and Jessica find themselves among the Fremen to the point where we get to the end of the book, where the big confrontation happens and the Emperor's there.
It's like almost
That's
3 years.
It's years.
Yeah.
And in the film, it seems like just a few months between.
Well,
those
it
two.
is guaranteed less than 9 months.
Yeah, because a certain
At least
character
that.
doesn't show up.
A certain character who should be 2 years old isn't in the film because she hasn't been born yet.
Yeah.
Unless the spice grants many years pregnancy time,
It's true.
Yeah.
I doubt it. No, I think I found that one of the changes where I would think they found a good solution for the problem of having a minor on set. No.
Yeah.
So
that's the first thing I thought about. Yeah.
No,
I thought
so
if you're going to make a Dune movie, especially like up until the end of Dune, and you're not going to have Aaliyah in it, then that was a good way to have Aaliyah in it. The way they did it.
Yeah.
That was actually a pretty good and fitting, considering what Aaliyah is and ends up being.
Of course, they
it was
have to
kind of
change,
a fitting way to do it.
To change Baron Harkonnen's fate. Well, not exactly his fate, but the way his fate happens.
Well, who kills him? Yeah, and who kills him?
Yeah.
That was one of the changes that I personally struggled with more because Ollie
it's
is
a bit of an anticlimax, actually.
not even the Baron's death, but just that Ollie is like not really in the movie. I mean, she has a presence definitely, and she has lines,
but she's not a person in the movie,
right? And
most of her lines are spoken like a ventriloquist. With Jessica says, "Oh yeah, what'd you say? Oh okay."
exactly. And I just find her such a unique presence, particularly in the first book. So I definitely missed that. I mean, I love the movie overall, and I really liked some of the changes, less so, like the Alia ones. I do wonder if the compressed timeline was a result of them deciding that they didn't want to deal with a toddler walking around and speaking like an adult. I don't, because otherwise I just don't know why. I mean, did they feel that?
Well, I mean, it would be hard to. I think that was probably the main reason. It would be hard to cast.
Right.
Now you won't find a 2-year-old that would be able to produce this. So whatever child you cast would be older anyway, no? And then, I mean, you have lots of legal and also production problems because as soon as you have a minor on set, you can't film for as long as normally because they get more off time and more break time and so on. Now, so I think that's probably the main reason why.
I think they just didn't want to have the totally bizarre weirdo kid syndrome from Lynch's movie.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Aaliyah in Lynch's movie is, I mean, in a way, really appropriate because she was a really disturbing little kid. But
almost disturbing in a cheesy way.
I think you can do it though. Like horror movies have been doing it for a long time. Having the creepy kid. I agree. You'd have to age it up, right? You'd have to extend the time skip and make her like 4 or 5 years old, maybe. But you can find some little kid actor out there who can be just like really creepy and walking around everywhere and like staring at people in the way Jessica does in the movie and things like that. Like I think it's doable, but I definitely agree on that. Like a big part of it was probably practicality, just in terms of. I mean, they shot in the desert, like they actually shot on location. So imagine having a kid in that like insanely hot weather.
Yeah, I think they shot in Jordan and in Namibia, and then having, even if you find a 10-year-old who they can pass off as 4 or 5, it still is a challenge, I think. So
there were three changes, I think, that were the main things that really kind of sat wrong with me. And one of them was the water of life.
Yeah.
Now the whole water of life thing, I was like,
wait, you wanted the orgy, I guess, Matt.
I wanted the drug orgy, of course. But sure. But it felt almost like it was like, oh yeah, and she drank some blue stuff. It just felt like it was super quick. I didn't have any feeling. I thought if I've not read the books, I don't know what the water of life did other than make her fetus weird. You know, like there was no feeling of, oh, she has all of the memories of all of the Reverend Mothers ever, and has achieved a level of consciousness that's totally different and
She
beyond.
did get cool tattoos out of it, though.
Yeah, did those come from the Water of Life? I mean,
I mean, they do say that
interesting.
she
That's
gets
an
the
interesting
ancestral
point.
memories.
Yeah.
But
yeah,
they said it,
just
but
didn't
yeah.
feel like there was any weight or experience of that there.
It's an interesting
just-
point, Matt, because
it felt
how
like it
much,
brushed
how much of
quickly
us
away.
book readers are taking in information from the book while we're watching the movie and automatically correlating it without having that perspective of non-book reading and having it being a new movie to you and how much you're missing out on information. That's
I would have
conundrum.
I mean, I saw it with one of the few people I know in real life who's more of a Dune fan than I am. So like us talking
Right,
about it
yeah.
afterwards, I was pointing out things and then he was pointing out deeper details of things that I didn't know. So I was like, I have no idea how someone who's never read the books would have experienced it. The other thing that got on my nerves the whole time, and I kind of understand why it was necessary. Chani is basically against Paul.
So I like
Right?
that. I actually
yeah, I
like
like that.
Yeah.
Same here.
Yeah, I didn't have so much a problem
Yeah.
with that, but what the changes I didn't like with, especially with Chani, was that in the film she's not a mother, and I think that takes away a lot of the complexity of her character that
That's
we
the
have.
compression again, too. I
It's
think.
That's the
also- it's
compression
also-
again.
it's
Yes, I
also
mean, I
one of
understand
Paul's main
the
motivations.
motivation behind it, but it takes away from the complexity of the character, I think, and also makes her this more one-dimensional. No? So mothers can't be fighters or vice versa, and so there is a lot of stuff going on there with that change for myself.
And I mean, that particular point is also the point in the book where Paul snaps, basically, and decides, like, they kill his son, you know, and that's the point where he's like, okay,
Exactly. No? So
Harkonnens
because
must die.
this is all not there. This whole kind of like the grief that she and Paul both carry about the children being killed is then also not there. No, so I think that was for me one of the major changes where I wasn't really on board with, I have to say.
I also miss having Leto in it, even briefly, and I think there's a place for him. Like, he could have died in the assault on Siege Tabra,
but not
like,
with the time compression.
Right. I just mean, like, theoretically, if you like restructured it a bit, like, that's where you fit it in, right?
Yeah.
But I mean, I think it's a bigger deal for Chani's character in some sense, because I feel like my reading of Paul's reaction is that he doesn't really grieve his son. I mean, you can argue, because that's like post Water of Life. He's very much just kind of like, he's like, we can always have more sons. You know, that's his, like, what he says to Chani in reaction. And, you know, I think you could argue that maybe he's like bottling it all up because he has to deal with the mission. You know, he doesn't want to like break down. But I always read that as like kind of showing how far he had like fallen, in a sense, like emotionally, that he was closing himself off so much and being this, you know, more cold-hearted character. But I do agree. I miss Leto.
Yeah,
So
that's exactly what I was going to say about Chani and the change in her character, her being conflicted about Paul, and her being the only one in that scene at the end who sees Paul for what he is, whereas everyone else is Muad'Dib, you know, and they've lost their minds. They've given over their wills to this Messiah figure, and having her be the one to turn her back and walk away, very important, I thought, in terms of they did that throughout. They did that throughout the film, where her character was conflicted about this whole thing, along with Paul. But Paul, once he embraces the role, he's gone, and you know, and of course, she's been.
That's funny because the end with Chani, to me, the way it played out, felt like they were just positioning her as the jilted lover. Like, Paul's going to marry some other woman, and Chani's like, I'm pissed, I'm leaving.
That's part of it, but it's much more than that, because they've been having these conversations the whole time about this role of Messiah and what it would mean for her people. She is concerned for her people and sees where they're going. They're going off a cliff. So I think there's much more than just, oh, you broke up with me and you're going to marry this princess. I mean, that's personal too, but I think it's much more than that.
I was really cut that they took out Jessica's line that history will see us as wives.
Yeah,
I'm like,
yeah.
ah,
Same here.
It's a great line.
Same here. I
it's a
think
great
it's a
line, and
very
it's so important to Jessica
yeah,
and
Yeah.
Chani.
I had that
and the whole thing
underlined.
that's
Yeah.
going on. You know.
yeah. Yeah, and I think that adds a bit to this feeling that she acts like the jilted lover in the end, no?
Totally.
But I think it's a good point that Marcus makes here. Maybe the film needs to have someone voice the dangers in Messiahs, because they also changed Jessica quite a bit.
Mhm.
And in the book,
Yeah,
she
yeah.
is much more the warning, sober voice, trying to train her son into seeing the dangers of power. And in the film, that's completely gone. No, she's really
She's
pushing
pushing the
forward.
agenda. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
no?
I totally missed. I mean, this was in the first film, but I totally missed her confronting Paul right after he kills Jamas. You know, like she pulls him down. Like, not that he learns that killing is a good thing or that there's glory in it or something, and she pulls him down. And in the movie, she does nothing. The third and main thing that I was like, I don't understand what's going on and why they did this. At the end, right at the end, Paul confronts the Emperor. He has his duel with Fade, which was a really cool duel, but I felt it was missing a lot of things from the book. But he wins. He's like, I'm going to marry your daughter. I'm going to be Emperor now. And the Spacing Guild has brought all of the houses to orbit Arrakis, and immediately they're ready to attack Paul. I'm like, that doesn't make any sense at all. Because Paul has pointed out numerous times in the movie that the person who controls the thing is the person who's able to destroy it. And at the end, he says, I can destroy the spice. I'm the boss here. And they're all, and the Spacing Guild, who doesn't exist without spice, is willing to transport a bunch of people who are going to attack Paul, who is threatened to destroy the spice. I'm like, I don't really understand how that makes any kind of sense. And I feel like I'm crazy because I haven't heard anybody else complain about this. And it feels like I'm just like making shit up or something. But
I think that's valid. I also think that, you know, if you're in their position, you can, I mean, this is almost like devil's advocate, because I mostly agree with you that I think that like sort of the politics of it all at the end and like the situation wasn't as well developed as it is in the book. And like understanding kind of the force detente they have. But I, you know, they called Paul on his bluff basically. And I don't know that that is the Spacing Guild. You would think would be like, no, absolutely not. But like the houses, I could see them why they would maybe go, like, even though it theoretically could lead to all of their extinction or mass, you know, they didn't necessarily clarify the costs of the spice and, you know, the real impact it has on like the whole society. But, you know, I don't think Paul was ever actually going to nuke it all, because that would basically be the end of him too. You know, I mean, it's mutually assured destruction. And so I guess
sure, but it's like in the book, it's kind of the main reason he wins.
Right.
He controls the spice, or controls / could destroy it. And the Spacing Guild would never allow that to happen. Therefore, they would never transport a whole bunch of people who want to attack him.
Like, I realize as we're talking about this, I don't actually know, what is the jihad over? Like, or what is it about in the books? Because is it not theoretically fighting the other, like the great houses? I don't even know why the Fremen go out and start killing people. Like just serious question. Like what is it about? Like, what are they doing?
It's basically a religious crusade.
To like convert everyone to.
I mean, it's not a purely military thing. It's jihad. Like, they're going out and spreading the religion of their Messiah.
And so the idea is that everyone is like opposed to accepting Paul as the Messiah, and so they go and start killing them.
I think their motivation changes. I mean, in the book, they start out with those raids for, I think, partly revenge against the colonizers, not the great houses who are in charge of Arrakis, basically are colonizing them. And I think that's what is initially why they fight. And then, of course, pilfer the technology as well. Not the technology is kind of
Right.
like reappropriated then. But I think this changes as soon as they accept that Paul is actually the Muad'Dib, no? The
But
Mahdi.
none of that. I mean, like there is no jihad in the first book, and
No, no,
actually
the
there
first
is
book
no jihad in the second
ends
book.
with
Right.
Jessica and
The
Shani
jihad happens in
having,
between the two
Right.
books. Like
Right.
yeah.
in the
No,
second book,
the
it's
first
already
book,
over, basically.
yeah. The
Well,
first
yeah.
book ends with Jessica and Shani having her little heart to heart, and
Mm.
Paul instructing his mother to, yeah, negotiate basically his marriage. No, so that's
Yeah.
how the book ends. I think a lot of the political intrigue of the book in the film has been converted into visuals. Now,
Yeah.
when we see all the
And
flags,
character
we see
intrigue.
them marching and all that. No,
Mhm.
And they don't
I
even
think
mention
that,
Chom. Like Chom doesn't appear in the
yeah,
movies at all.
yeah,
A
yeah.
lot of times in film, it's I think visual spectacle trumps logical storytelling, and that is why you have the ending the way it is with the invasion of this
Yeah.
everybody's scrambling, and that's why the duel with Fade Routha plays out the way it does. You don't get stabbed in the guts and then stabbed again and then win a duel. I mean, he should be dead, really.
Yeah.
But it's cool. It was really cool, much cooler than the the David Lynch one where Sting is twirling around and stuff. But,
Yeah.
No,
but yeah,
it was a beautifully choreographed knife fight, no question.
beautiful. Yeah.
Yeah.
But it
Yeah,
doesn't
I-
make sense.
The thing
The actors
the thing
did a
I
great
missed a
job.
little. Oh yeah, Butler was awesome.
Shatner.
I
They went
missed
for
a
it.
little bit with him. Like in the book, Fade is not a psychopath, right? I mean, he's not like an out of control, over the top psychopath. He is sneaky as hell. He's a cheat. He's a liar, but he's not a out of control psycho. You know,
Like he doesn't kill the lady next to him just to test how
he
sharp
doesn't
his is.
slash
No.
people's throats
Yeah.
just because he's bored. You know, I mean, like that's not Fade in the books. And one of the things in the knife fight at the end, it all kind of hinges on this hidden blade he's got on his hip.
Yeah, the poison.
You know, so he's cheating. He's using poison. He's using a knife or a blade that he's not meant to even have, and that's his big play. Not actually like I'll face you in an honest knife fight. You know.
Yeah,
And
they
I
finally-
missed that a little bit with Fade.
Yeah.
Like, he was a
Little
bit
bit.
too straight psycho. You know.
Except I felt like they added depth in a different place, which is that they had his weird obsession with honor. You know, like he enjoys. You see it in the big Colosseum fight where, like,
Right.
where they parallel the lines. You fought well, Atreides, right? And he was like having fun. He was enjoying the actual like thrill of a real fight. And that bothered me. But as I've seen the movie multiple times, I confess, and I actually saw it way before a lot of the CGI was done, and that was something that I got more comfortable with over time. He's a different character, but like,
Yeah.
I still felt like he was complex in a way. Jessica's the one who I do feel like they've kind of flattened a bit, which is interesting because they worked so hard to make Chani more dynamic. Like honestly, Chani's like not that complex a character in the books. I feel like
Chani is Paul's accessory in the
Right.
like she's just a prop in the book.
And so I really appreciate, because I felt like there's always potential with her, but it wasn't necessarily utilized in the books. And I feel like they did a great job in that way. That's why I like the change, as well as just sort of the thematic impact of it. But Jessica, I definitely felt like they flattened by making her so villainous.
Yeah. Varsha, what did you think of the movie?
Oh, I love the movie overall, but we're on a good topic because the Jessica change was one that I felt kind of conflicted over. I did kind of see the purpose of it to a certain extent. I think the movie potentially needed a way to make it clear that the prophecy isn't that someone will come save your people. It's someone manipulating a whole people to serve their own ends, and that's what Jessica's doing here. I didn't quite like how that villainized both her and Alia while it was at it, but I just convinced myself it's a different character in the movie as compared to the books. And yeah, I think overall, I thought the visuals were stunning and everything was brilliant there. The music, of course, I'm a huge fan of Hans Zimmer, so I have to talk about the music as well. And the scene with the sandworm when Paul stands up and they play that refrain, absolutely brilliant. I had like full body goosebumps over it. I thought that was absolutely beautifully done. One other change that we haven't really talked about yet, Stilgar. I think in the book there is a brief mention towards the end when Stilgar uh, sees how Paul has this vision of like he knows that Harkonnen is dead before anyone tells him, and that leads to this building up of the Muad'Dib myth even more, and Paul has a thought to himself that when Stilgar also starts to sort of worship him, that it reduced him a little bit in his eyes.
Yeah.
I feel like the movie started with that and stayed with that the whole time. So I don't know about Paul, but it reduced Stilgar in my eyes. And once again, I think that's probably deliberate to make it clear that these things can be manipulated, perhaps. But yeah, that was another interesting change that I was grappling with because I love Stilgar, the fatherly figure and the measured and stable person that he is in the book. And he is that to a great extent in the movies, but the
Only up until Paul rides the worm.
yeah, yeah.
And
And
after
then,
that, he's a fanatic puppet.
yeah.
I think something that I did like coming out of that was that he also interestingly had agency in terms of how the prophecy in this cult develops. Like he's as impactful in making it happen and making Paul become Lisan al-Gaib as Jessica is in a sense. I mean, he's the one who's like pushing them. He's the one who pushes Jessica to become a Reverend Mother. Like, I think in the book she like willfully makes it happen, right? And it's interesting. Stilgar is like actively pressuring them in a way I don't really think he does in the book, which I thought was an interesting sort of religious dynamic there. That like he was like kind of imposing this, his beliefs in this green paradise, he saw upon Paul and Jessica. And I don't know, I just thought it was an interesting way to add to the tension and to his character, where like he was a zealot. I mean, that was also interesting, right? That he's a zealot, but a zealot that you like he's the comedic relief in the movie, like he gets a lot of the best like little moments. I don't know. I wasn't so bothered by his changes, although there definitely were changes to his character.
I really like that they make his zealotry, as Matt said, they make his zealotry more obvious. It really comes out after Paul rides the sandworm. And I feel like it's a big metaphor in a way. And the word big is very appropriate here. Riding the sandworm, you got
sometimes Philip, a worm is just a worm.
Top of the, sometimes, but you got this little tiny person on top of the sandworm controlling this vast creature with a rope and a hook. And that's kind of what he's doing with the Fremen people. I mean, he's got this vast will that he is now going to be controlling, wielding, and it's powerful and it's dangerous, and you may think you have control over it, but at any moment it could crush you, So I love that they chose that moment to make Stilgar's zealotry really come out.
That was to me the main absolute improvement from the book.
Yeah.
Like Herbert wrote Paul's first sandworm ride as if it wasn't really that big a deal. I didn't, because he didn't, I mean, Herbert wasn't much of an action writer, he didn't really get into that kind of stuff. And the worm ride, I don't even remember the details of it. Maybe it wasn't even directly described. I don't remember. You can see what kind of impact reading about it had on me. But that scene in the movie was like stand up and cheer, fist pumping kind of moment where Paul manages it. And I mean, even knowing, like, we've all read the book, even knowing that he's going to succeed, there were still moments where you're like, I don't know. It's on the edge. I mean,
Yeah.
This is pretty dangerous what he's doing. You know, it was a really, really good scene. So
I
well
wanted to
done.
stand up and scream, Muad'Dib, you know.
Muad'Dib.
It kind of
Yeah.
makes sense that it's not made a big deal of, though, right? Because they keep telling Paul and bringing him down a bit. Like Stilgar gives him a talking to afterwards about all the mistakes he made. Because Fremen children do it from when they're 10 years old. So
Yeah.
it's not really that big a deal. It's not.
Exactly.
Yeah,
It's
not
catching
changing
the
much
bus
for them.
alone for the first time, basically.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Doing the school ride by yourself.
Yeah.
That's how it's described in the book. Now, whereas the film makes us into this really big thing. No?
Which I mean, it is. Like,
Oh yeah, of course.
These things are huge, and it's
Yeah,
tricky.
yeah.
It's really tricky, and yeah, you could get crushed pretty easily. So it should be a big
Yeah.
deal, you know.
I think talking about kind of the stakes and the visceral experience, I found actually the movie much more climactic at the ending than the book was. I actually kind of felt like the book ends on an anticlimax. It all just kind of like they sweep, you know. And I mean they do in the movie too, but like I actually felt like the duel with Phaedratha was more intense than it was in the book, where I was just kind of like, okay, he has this like hidden poison needle, but I don't know. I never like seriously was that worried about Paul. And you know, like as Philip, you know, you mentioned like obviously Paul getting stabbed like not once but twice, I think. Like he's not going to be okay. But you know,
And not just cut, but like full on stabbed. Like they have to
And
get
afterwards,
knives
he's
out
like-
of him afterwards.
his innards
Afterwards,
are
he's like, and
wounded.
now about the wedding plans, you know.
Yeah. And yeah, he just continues to, you know, walk around, swamp his foot, you know. I mean, he's okay. But I really liked that and how it played out. Obviously in the choreography and what the actors brought to it, and but also the way it I didn't catch this until I think the fourth time I saw the movie, that Paul, the way he beats Phaedratha is in the very opening in part one, the scene with Gurney, how Gurney sort of, you know, they have this mutual stabbing moment. And there's so much, like, if you look at so many of the details that are like callbacks or payoffs to all of this planting that's done in the first part that I just really appreciated and saw, like, there are so many little details that I think the movie did really well. And then there are other details that they didn't do so well, like the political situation, certainly.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard without having like the whole reason, I guess, that they didn't have the dinner scene in the first movie.
Yeah.
It's hard just having a whole bunch of people talk about politics in a movie. And it's really hard communicating the politics without doing that, you know? Like, how do you make clear what Chom is? I mean, Chom doesn't have any visual or physical presence even in the books. It's just mentioned by people, you know, and Chom is a really important big deal, but you never see a person even who is a Chom representative, I think, in the books. You know, it's just there's this thing that exists somewhere, and you know,
now
and that's hard to bring in a movie.
The Gurney Halleck is given directorship in Chom in the book. Was that even like anything mentioned about that in the movie at all?
He's described as like more like a mercenary or like when Paul meets him in the film, he's kind of with a bunch of schmucks.
Yeah, he's with the smugglers. Yeah,
the smugglers.
When they have a reunion, but at the very end of the book, where after he agrees to the marriage with the emperor, he gives the emperors to be stripped of his holdings in the Chom directorship, and he gives it to Gurney Halleck. And I didn't know if any of those rewards were mentioned in the movie.
Chom isn't even mentioned anywhere ever in the movie.
Yeah, were any rewards mentioned at all?
And Gurney doesn't get anything at the end of the movie. No, Gurney's not even.
He gets to kill Robin.
He gets to kill.
That's true. Yeah.
Big win.
Which was another. I mean, I guess in a movie it kind of has to happen.
I like that.
Yeah. Finally, Gurney gets his payoff.
It's an anticlimax too, though, I will admit. In the movie, like it's over so fast. I wish they drew that out. I guess they wanted to kind of make Robin a big like punk, You know, he's definitely sort of over the course of the movie really like cut down to size.
They turned
But-
him into a kind of weakling loser
Right.
throughout
Which
the
to be
movie.
fair, he's like hardly in the book. Like
he's hardly in the book, but when he is, he's portrayed as being an absolute monster. Like he's
Right.
never portrayed as being a coward or
He's called the Beast, isn't he?
yeah, Beast Raban. I mean, it's
Yeah.
basically his name. Like everyone calls him Beast Raban. And then him being sort of like, "Ooh, Duncan Idaho's coming. I'm going to run away," and that kind of stuff. Are just like, it's not the Beast Raban I know.
Yeah. I think
Why do
this
they
is
call
an
him
interesting comment that Eric makes. Movies don't have epigraphs. And I think that's why we probably are more afraid for Paul in the film than in the book, no? Because the epigraphs in the book, as we said before, give quite a bit away, no? So we know. Also because there is a history, no? There are excerpts of a history that has been written about him. So we know he will survive, no?
Yeah, already
Whereas
in chapter 2, it's
movie-
like spoiler. It's Dr. Yue.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, exactly. No, yeah.
Which that's something I enjoy about like going back to the
I
book.
think it's cool.
Yeah,
I think it's really cool.
It sets the tension and lets Yue be such a rich character. Honestly, in a way, he isn't in the first movie. I mean, they cut out all his scenes. Like they did shoot scenes for him, but they decided, I guess, they weren't necessary. But Yue has a lot of interesting depth and an interesting arc in the book. I'm sorry, my dog is barking. I'll be right back.
Okay, we like dogs.
Yeah.
So there were some scenes which had a bunch of people chanting around some 3D visual thing in the Harkonnen city, I guess. What was that? At first I thought they were guild people navigating, but then they kept going back to it, so it had to be a place on Arrakis. But I couldn't figure out where that was or what the chanting was supposed to be.
What? Sorry, what chanting?
The control room on Giedi Prime,
That.
where all the bald Harkonnen people are sitting around the
That's on Arrakeen.
hologram.
That's in Arrakeen.
Yeah.
It's in the capital city.
Hmm.
Oh,
They
that
have
was
a
in
little-
Arrakeen.
Yeah, they have a little establishing shot
Okay.
where they show you Arrakeen. They say Arrakeen, they like capital of the north of Arrakis, and then they cut to the thing. It's in
Okay.
Arrakeen.
Okay.
So the
But
chanting.
Varsha's question was, what were they doing there? What was that all about?
I think it's like, I mean, I don't know how the technology works because they don't have computers, but maybe they were all mentats,
Hmm.
and
And they were creating holograms out of their heads?
well, yeah, that's the thing I don't understand is the holograms.
Yeah.
But
That
I mean, they
was-
were monitoring, I think, life activity like on in the north of Arrakis, and they didn't even bother with the south because they thought, no one, like there were like 12 people living there.
Yeah.
Speaking of,
Oh,
the-
is this what in the book the guild does? That they have satellites that
Hmm.
go over certain parts of Arrakis to monitor the Fremen. Is that what that's about then?
Well, I think the guild still does that because the emperor mentions that he has seen signs of life forms in the south that the Harkonnens completely missed. Like that's part of his big speech to the Baron. Yeah. Okay. So so Matt, I think, what Matt's saying here, I think that's what they were doing. I think those were all mentats, the chanting guys.
Okay, that makes sense. That was sort of what I guessed, but it wasn't. I don't know why they would chant. But speaking of the North versus the South, they do tell us in the movie a few times that the South has a much vaster population than the North, but that overhead shot where Paul walks through the crowd, just how off the Harkonnens are in terms of how populated that is. I thought that was a brilliant scene.
Absolutely.
Yeah, they talk about that. I think that line made it into the movie. I know it's in the book where like the Harkonnens are talking about it and there's like, no, but nobody lives in the South. And then the Atreides are talking about it and they're like, so there are 50 million Fremen on the planet? I love how off, like how completely stupid in a way the Harkonnens are just because of their assumptions about these primitive people.
But they never have a bad hair day.
True. It seems to move around. In the next movie, it's going to be the Atreides who are bald. In Lynch's movie, it was the Bene Gesserit.
Mm.
They were all bald. And then it moved to the Harkonnens. So next time it's got to be the Atreides, I think.
What did you all think of, excuse me, how they adapted Irulan?
I like that. I thought
Yeah.
that was, first of all, the actor did a brilliant job. And secondly, I loved her connection with the Bene Gesserit, and her. I love how they give a nod to the epigraphs in the book by having her
Recording.
that recording thing that she's always doing. They showed that a couple times, so that was really cool. But yeah, I thought that was a plus for me.
Who do you think they're going to have do the like opening voiceover in the Messiah adaptation? Alia, maybe? Like I was wondering, because it was Chani in part 1, Irulan in part 2. Like I feel like they're going to switch it up again, right? Like it's not going to be one of them.
I mean, the main thing to talk about in that voiceover is there's just been a really big jihad for a number of years. So like Alia would make sense.
Yeah, and they have the advantage they could forward the timeline a little bit more for Messiah to make Aaliyah a little bit older.
They're going to.
They're going to have to.
Well, just same way they they compressed it in this movie. They could.
I mean, we get already one shot where we have Aaliyah, where we kind of go over the sand dunes and onto the beach, and then we have the sea in front of her, and we see her in one of those visions that Paul has, and he talks to her, and I think she talks about the jihad. So it would point at then. I mean, if they want to connect again the parts, like they connect part 2 to part 1, then that would make a lot of sense to have her then do that.
Sure.
I'm really excited to see Anya Taylor-Joy because she has that like sort of uncanny valley isn't the right. She just looks a little strange, like beautiful but strange, which is perfect for all.
I was watching another video yesterday, and they kept referring to her as plastic surgery face, and
I don't know if it's plastic surgery, but she definitely has the like.
She doesn't look normal human. Yeah.
Right.
She's definitely got something odd about her.
And on top of that, she's a phenomenal actress. So I think she's going to be a real highlight in the next movie.
But they're going to have to fast forward a lot because she's not anywhere near as young as Aaliyah.
Yeah. I bet it's going to be 20 years. That's my guess. So like a flat 20 years.
And then my question is, like, the twins?
I mean, well, okay, we have to be careful. We don't want to.
Yeah, because that's the next book.
Yeah.
I think Chani will definitely be in the next movie. Is what I will say.
There you go. Yeah.
Chani definitely has to be in the next movie, and I mean, that was also kind of one of the things I found kind of weird because like Chani disappears at the end, and she's either pissed off that Paul's marrying another woman, or she's pissed off that Paul is like a death-dealing, killing billions messiah, or both. And she disappears. And immediately Paul says to Jessica, "Don't worry, she'll get over it." Which just sort of seems like a cop-out to me. It's like, yeah, she'll be in the next movie, so she'll get over it. Don't worry, she'll get over it.
So no matter what happens, I want you to know I love you. Right.
Yeah.
I kind of like the
what not to say to the woman you love.
Yeah, I mean that was not a good sign right there.
No.
I kind of like Chani's line at the end of the book, which I kind of wish they would have used in the movie. Was she whispered to him, "No title for me, no title, I beg of you." She didn't want like a title from all of this stuff he was handing out to everybody else. And I kind of wish they would have used that in the book because I thought that was a character point in the book that I wanted to kind of see in the movie too. But like Kyle said earlier, I think they did give Chani a lot more character in the movie overall than she generally had. But I wish they would have kept that one at least.
I'm the pure speculation here. I think some of the things we get at the end of the book we're gonna get in the next movie.
That's
Like I
possible.
wouldn't be surprised if Jessica has her famous ending line in the next movie.
Mm.
Hmm.
Yeah,
But it's yeah. I mean, if you move it
maybe. Yeah.
in time a lot, yeah.
Right. I mean, I just
Yeah.
think that Messiah definitely could use fleshing out for a film, and so I think that there's gonna be a lot. I mean, possibly even more changes.
Yeah.
And
Well, I hope
think
they do something like that, because like I missed a lot of because there was a lot of discussion between Jessica and Paul about how religions work and how religions work with politics, and you know that how that ride of religion and politics in one wagon is something that cannot be stopped. And so I really missed that from the movie, because that was like part of some of my favorite parts in the book. They had discussions like that in that discussion of that Paul seeing his mother as the enemy almost at points, and how Paul is a bit more of a not the hero towards the end of the book, whereas in the movie he definitely is, and so I missed that part of it, and I'm wondering if, like you said, maybe they're saving that for the Messiah movie if they're doing it.
it's so interesting. Like going back to how they adapted Jessica, because Paul does start to view her very antagonistically, and it's almost like they took Paul's point of view of her and then transposed it into the movie as her actual characterization. Because we're in her head in the book, and we know like she actually is still sympathetic. She wants what's best for Paul. She's just trying to survive. And she's, I think she's still. I didn't reread this. I'll admit. I'm just here to discuss with wonderful people, but my understanding, she still is trying to make him the Kwisatz Haderach, but it's not like, she's not so villainous in how she's trying to do it.
Right. Yeah.
And yeah, it's like they just like took, because Paul views her as this antagonist after a while, but I don't know.
Even from the beginning, though, Jessica knows what she's doing, even in the books, by even choosing to have a male child instead of a female child. She's already committing to this path. So even though I agree that she seems kind of softer or more sympathetic or vulnerable or whatever in the books, I think what we're getting in the film is a sense that it's a survival thing at first, and it's a role that she gets into. And we don't see the moments of doubt so much, but it's still, she is playing this role to its fullest, because she understands even before Paul, this is where we got to go. And, too bad.
Yeah. Well, the great thing about her character that I love so much in the books is that she is a mother first. Yeah. And so she is looking out for her son the whole time, no matter how many conflicting other roles they got to take on with each other. And I love that mix between them. And so I'm hoping that comes out even more if they do a third movie.
That does get
I think
lost a
she's
little bit.
definitely more conflicted in the book than she is in the movie. And I think it's very significant, this change, that in the book, Paul is deciding by himself he will take the water of life, whereas in the film, she actually already kind of like sets up the path for that by going to the water master and telling him, no, he will come to you and you have to facilitate that. Even if he's not supposed to be here, now you have to let him in. And I think that kind of like, adds to this feeling that she's much more, I don't know even if I would call her more the villain, but more to take. She's willing to pay a higher price, I think, in the film. Yeah, more so than in the book.
I do think one of the ways that this, I think, plays out well is that what would be really hard, and I don't know that they necessarily developed this as well as they could have in a movie, is like showing how Paul feels trapped by his visions of the future. I mean, and not just trapped, like he's clearly afraid of it, but like in a sense, in the book, you have this thematic question of like how prophecy creates itself, or these visions of the future, right? And how like he isn't sure, he basically feels forced into this path. And by having all of these people, I think like Jessica and Stilgar, pressuring him to become this, whether it's the Lisan al Gaib or the Kwisatz Haderach, I think it externalizes Paul's internal struggles in the book of how he feels like everything around him, and particularly his visions, are making it so he has no choice but to become this tyrant messiah.
Yeah, I didn't get the feeling in the second movie. In the first movie, there's the scene where Paul and Jessica are in the tent. They've just escaped, and he has his first like spice flip out, and he's having his vision of the jihad, and he's horrified, and he doesn't want it to happen, and all of that. That was really clear in the first movie. In the second movie, I had no feeling that he saw something coming, was trying to avoid it.
I mean, he has the visions. Like he talks about billions of people, and he doesn't want to do it. Like it's in the movie. It definitely is.
I didn't see it in his action, I guess. It didn't seem like he was trying to steer anything away from it.
Well, he avoids going south for quite some time, right?
Yeah. I think that's how they tried to make it, like represent it. Yeah.
I need to watch it again. I like when I walked out, I was like, I am very conflicted about that, and I liked it less than I expected. And I expect that may change if I watch it another couple times.
That's how I felt the first time.
To do that yet.
I left the first time I saw it liking it, but feeling really conflicted about a lot of the changes. Like the ending in particular being so different from the ending of the book left me initially like really uncomfortable. And I sat with it. And so then when I saw it again, and particularly when I saw like the big final battle and the worms coming out of the sandstorm, that's a scene we haven't talked about that I loved. But
that battle, I have no problems with that. That was just amazing. The worms charging out at the Sardaukar. It's like, yeah.
I think
epic.
You when you really see it multiple times, you can see how deliberate all of the choices were. And I don't know that I necessarily agree with everyone. Like we talked about Alia being my own personal one that I struggled with. But it's definitely everything was done for a reason. And like there are little pieces, like they're laying out a really complex puzzle. But it's not, it's certainly not like a perfect one-to-one adaptation of the book.
Yeah. I actually agree with the Aaliyah decision for the film. I actually did not want to see the creepy 2-year-old.
I'm so here for creepy children. Again, maybe it's the horror fan in me. I don't know. Some messed up part of me. I also just love her character in general. Like over her arc in the series is one of my favorites. I think she's a really
she is totally. I mean, in the first book, also I find her in the book totally fascinating.
Yeah,
like because there's this kind of sweet thing with her and her mother, but then you can also imagine everybody else is like, keep this creepy child away from me.
Yeah,
abomination.
Totally exactly. She's abomination, and the abomination line is only applied to Paul now in the movies.
She'll be called it. I have no doubt.
Yeah, I'm sure.
In the next movie, she will be called an abomination.
Yeah.
Sticks and stones may break my bones, but names will never hurt me.
But I mean, in the book, it's really like we see this, not that I think it's Jami's wife who comes to Jessica and tells her, no, the other children don't want to play with her, and
we're going to have problems with Aaliyah.
That's a big problem that they
not only the other children don't want to play with her, but like the other Fremen don't want to be anywhere near her. It's
that
like,
as well.
This is a problem. Yeah.
I think that was one of my favorite scenes in this part of the book, the discussion between Alia, Hara, and Jessica, where they go back and forth. Like Hara says, I love you, and that's why I'm, sharing all of this because I need to protect you. And Alia talking about how she knows that it's coming from a place of love, but also, and the hurt that Jessica feels about how her child is being treated. I thought that scene was absolutely brilliant. I was kind of looking forward to it when I went to the movie, but yeah, it's fine. But that scene I thought was really well done.
The most adult and understanding person in the room is unfortunately Aaliyah.
Yeah, yeah.
I can't imagine why anyone thinks she's an abomination.
Well, because 2-year-olds normally do not have those
Yeah,
thought
yeah, yeah.
processes.
Yeah.
No, they're in the terrible twos. They throw themselves on the ground and have tantrums.
Children don't have filters. She says adult things without filters. So
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think something the movie definitely didn't develop well. I don't even know if they mention it. Is what the Kwisatz Haderach like actually is and what the purpose is. Like I guess in the Water of Life, Paul's Water of Life vision, you see male faces is what I've been told. I didn't notice them, but they never cover that he also gets the male ancestral memories. That does not come up.
The vision stuff in the movie. I mean, I know you probably really can't do these kinds of things any other way than in visions, but the vision parts of the movie, I was like, I'm not sure what I just saw, and I should be well equipped to understand it. You know, like a lot of the visions I found very vague and confusing.
How clear is that in the book, though? Like, what is the Kwisatz Haderach supposed to do, right? I mean, I know
I was talking about this in our last chat, I think.
Yeah.
I also,
Exactly.
having read all of the books, I still don't know why the Bene Gesserit or what the Bene Gesserit think they're going to do with the Kwisatz Haderach. What the purpose?
So I agree, it's vague in the film, but it's also vague in the book, right?
It is totally vague in the book. Yeah.
Well, I mean, what's not vague in the books is the difference between Paul and a Reverend Mother is he has all of the ancestral memories.
Yeah.
Male and female. He gets that from the Water of Life, whereas Jessica didn't. She only got the female side.
Right.
But like, why does anyone want a Kwisatz Haderach is never really clear in the books either. You know.
Sounds
cool.
The
only thing that is clear in the book is that he's like an upgrade, no? Because he has both sides, so to say. But what they want him for,
they call him the most powerful mind, the most powerful human mind ever, or something like that. I mean, of course, they want to manipulate him to then steer humanity in a direction.
Like any mad scientist, I think the Bene Gesserit want to keep creating the better and better and better. And so they've had this breeding program going on for thousands of years, and they're trying to improve all the time. And
so it's a marketing thing. You're saying it's marketing. Improve.
It may just be, fait accompli.
With 50% more ancestral memories.
I think my understanding is that it's maybe the future sight, that by having both of the lines of the ancestral memories, he can predict the future better. Maybe. I know that in the movie there's some line about how you have to understand the past to see the future, or it's something like that right before. It's with either Jamis or one of the Reverend Mothers tells him when he's having a spice vision before he goes south. And I think it may be a similar thing because the Reverend Mothers definitely they're not as prophetic as the Kwisatz Haderach is supposed to be. So I think that might be it. But
the Reverend Mothers technically don't have prescience, do they? They have this massive ancestral memory, but they don't get visions of the future.
Right.
That's a Paul thing.
It's also a little bit of the Spice Guild members thing in the book, because I remember during the battle at the end with Fade Rotha, Paul was saying, we can't see anything right now. Even these guys can't see anything, and even I can't see the outcome of this right now.
Yeah, it's a blind spot.
It's a blind spot. Yeah. So, so I think the prescience thing, for looking into the future, is a spice related thing.
Actually, you're right, because
they mention it a breeding thing with females.
I think they mention it right after the spice drug orgy. There's a bit where Paul, I think he's thinking to himself, because I think it's one of the Fremen brings him coffee before he asks for it, something like that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
He's like,
that's right,
they don't even know it, but because of their exposure to spice, they all have a really, really limited version of
limited
seeing
sense.
the future.
Right.
You know,
Yeah.
Yeah, but Paul has, I mean, he has visions right from the start. No, when the book
Right.
starts, he has this dream of Chani. No, so he has the visions right from the start. I mean, there's a lot of stuff rolled into Paul. No, not just that he will get the female and the male race memory, but he also is trained as a mentat.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So we have that as well rolled into him. So yeah.
and he's a Bene, and he's
Yeah.
basically all of the things in one.
Yeah, his mother
And-
trained him as a Ben Gesserit.
And he is the only one that has future visions without spice.
Yeah.
You know, like even long before he has exposure to the spice, like you said at the beginning already, he's got visions of what's going to happen on Arrakis.
I mean, I think that's still. I mean, maybe it's not related to spice, but he's still like exposed to spice, just in much smaller doses. Like they all are, I think.
At the beginning, I mean, in the books anyway, it's presented as like spice is a totally new thing to him.
Is it really okay? For some
Yeah.
reason,
Yeah,
I
like
thought
when they get to
already had,
Arrakis, he's
like
like
minor exposure.
noticing the taste of spice for the first time, and you know he's super aware of it as a new thing. It didn't seem like, because I mean, like if you're not a guild navigator, I guess you might be taking spice. If you were on another planet, you might be taking spice regularly just for the life extending properties.
Yeah,
But-
I guess I guess I projected it because I thought all the prescient stuff originates from the spice. I thought that was like its whole thing, but maybe, I mean, I don't know. I would have to.
Well, not for Paul, because he already has those visions on Caladan when
Right.
he hasn't been exposed to the spice.
Yeah,
Well, that's what I'm saying is I thought he had been in small doses because like it's just all throughout the galaxy, but I mean maybe not. I may be totally incorrect about that.
it certainly seems like in the book that it's a really new thing for him. You know, once they get to Arrakis, it seems like he's just not at all familiar with it.
In the book, Count Fendring is apparently another possibility for Kwisatz Haderach.
Mhm.
That, and was that because he could see visions of the future as well, like Paul did before before
Yeah.
Arrakis?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and because he's because of where he was, he's the end of a breeding line as well. I mean, he's the absolute end
Yeah.
because he's a eunuch. I mean, he's
Yeah, right.
not going to be breeding with anyone.
Yeah, that was
But-
interesting.
I see.
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah, I missed Fenring. I totally understand not putting him in the movie. He's a weird character who, in a way, doesn't matter that much. But I thought he was a super interesting character, and like especially him being so close to the Emperor. In fact, the only person who's actually really close to the Emperor in any kind of real way.
There was a slight sense of danger there when, if Fenring chose, he could have taken Paul out at that moment.
At the end,
And
at
he
the
chose
end,
not. Yeah.
the fact that Fenring was there and he stepped back
Yep.
was very meaningful, you know, because it's like, here's this dude, he's apparently the most dangerous man in the galaxy, and he chooses not to support the Emperor.
He could have
who
put
is
the
his
Emperor
best
back
friend.
in power right then and
Yeah,
there.
exactly. He could have shifted everything, and he sees what's happening, and he's like,
Back off.
I wonder if in the next movie they're gonna add a subplot, sort of adapting that idea with Margot Finnery, because Margot Finnery's in the movie, right? And she is pregnant explicitly with Phaedroth as child.
which I thought was stupid.
It's implied that happens in the book too.
It's implied in the book that it's an option. It's not implied that she actually gets pregnant from Fade. But and Reverend
Fenrig
Mother.
Yeah, Fenrig did said, yeah, you go ahead and do that in the book. He said, you know, that was definitely a possibility.
It never pays off in anything, But I'm
It
wondering.
does, but only in Brian Herbert's novels.
Okay, well there you go.
Oh,
There is
okay.
a character called Marie Fenring, who is the daughter of Fade Raltha and Margot Fenring. In
No kidding.
one of,
Oh,
I've
really?
only heard about it. I'm never going to touch those novels, but yeah, she does get born and turn up at some point and is pretty much irrelevant.
So yeah, where I was going with this was, can I'm blanking. Can women be prescient too, or is this a limited to male characters?
I don't see evidence anywhere of the Bene Gesserit or any female characters being prescient.
Nope.
And the thing with Fade Raltha in the film and Lady Fenring sleeping with him and getting preggers and all that is, I think it's more about character building for the Bene Gesserit than
Right.
anything else.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, it's showing that the Bene Gesserit are manipulating people all over the
Manipulating,
place.
yeah,
and
It was a cool scene too with her following him and then him like, I don't know where I am, and she's like, it's my room, you know, and he's like, you know. I thought it was well done. You know?
Yeah, that was an awesome sequence. What I was getting at was like the idea of like showing the blind spot in the future sight, that when you're exposed to another prescient individual, it's, you know, like a black hole. Because I feel like that's a really important idea, particularly later on. But also, Denis is not planning to go past Messiah, so I don't know.
Yeah,
if that's all that important.
Yeah, that was one of the things that was kind of unclear to me in the book, and it didn't really come up in the movie. But in the book, Jarrod also said this: that the knife fight with Fade Raltha is a blind spot for Paul. He doesn't know what happens there. And I never really understood why. Yeah. Unless Fade Raltha is also prescient.
Like with Count Fendring, right? Because he says in the book that he can't see how he dies, maybe because he's going to be killed by Fendring. And the reason he deduces he can't see Fendring is because he was a possibility for Kwisatz Haderach. Which
Fendring was, yeah.
Did they make that explicit in the movie then with the whole Gom Jabbar scene with the new that we have other possibilities?
I think it is, because between the Gom Jabbar and Fade Raltha explicitly has visions of the future. He mentions he dreamed of Margot.
That's right. Yeah. Yeah. So they do lay it out I think the reason that one kind of annoyed me, I get that for character building for the Bene Gesserit. It makes it clear that they're manipulating and breeding and da-da-da. But like her explicitly getting pregnant, I was like, I guess that's interesting, but it's just like a complete dead end.
Yeah.
Like nothing comes of that. Whereas now it feels like it should. It feels like there should be a child in the third movie who is the other Kwisatz Haderach, maybe. But actually, Margot has already said it's going to be a girl, so...
Yeah. Maybe she'll appear, though. I mean, maybe they'll pull that from Brian Herbert's book and just... I mean, it may be a minor character, but maybe we'll see what's her name, you said?
Marie Fenring.
There you go. Maybe we'll see her. I don't know. And maybe she'll be bald.
Did the movie make... Sorry, go ahead.
No, I just wanted to say, speaking of bald, I really wish that the Harkonnens had been red-haired and that Jessica had been red-haired. I missed that, but just a detail. Not a big deal. Go ahead, Varsha.
Oh, I was going to say, did the movie make it clear before the scene with where the placeholder for Lady Fenring got pregnant that the Bene Gesserit, that this is what they do, that they breed and expand bloodlines? Because that may have been a purpose for that, if not, but I can't remember if they did that.
Oh, it's very clear.
They'd already made it clear in the first movie.
Yeah.
Because they talk about how Jessica was supposed to bear a daughter, and she did not.
Okay.
Yeah, when Reverend Mother Mohiam is leaving Caladan in the first movie, she and Jessica talk about it, that, we had a plan. You weren't meant to have a son. Yeah.
That's fair.
Which also makes that Margot Fenring scene seem even more throwaway to me. But I guess if they're connecting it,
Well, unless it's like a plan B, not just in case the whole thing with Paul doesn't work out.
That's what it
then
is. Yeah.
yeah,
it's
and we-
exactly what it is, and it's like that in the book as well. But it just
Yeah,
felt
the
like
book
something
mentions
that could have
that, yeah.
been kind of a 2-sentence conversation would have done all of that, and not needing a whole scene for it. But
I think
it was
what
kind
you
of a
do-
cool scene. I mean, you know,
what I love all of that stuff, honestly, just like how it played out. I thought it was like really intense and atmospheric and wonderful. But you definitely get the sense that Denis is way more interested in the Bene Gesserit than he is in any other faction in
Yeah.
the whole universe.
Yeah.
Because he develops them, I think, really well. But just I actually think he physically shows us more of them than you actually get shown in the first book, just in terms
Yeah.
of their political manipulations. But like, yeah, we don't. I don't think they define Mentats once.
No.
They don't talk about the Spicing Guild. You see,
they have a
couple
weird stripe on their
characters.
lip, and they roll their eyes back occasionally. That's
Yeah.
Mentats. Yeah.
But in case you hadn't figured it out, Lady Fenring does tell us that Feyd-Rautha is a sociopath.
Oh,
yes,
missed that
she
bit.
does.
I thought he
but
was actually a pretty
also-
nice kid. I missed that. Okay.
He's the Baron's favorite. Come on.
The uncle's favorite, anyway. Yeah.
Yeah,
I missed him trying
I
to
mean,
kill the Baron.
but
I
this
mean,
is-
Fade is just a totally different character, you know.
This
Yeah.
seduction scene, of course, shows how badass the Bene Gesserits are and how little they actually care, no? Because the guy who we saw in previous scenes just casually slitting the throat of women he has around him like pets, no? And treats like pets, is suddenly down on his knees, and she does not come, no? So it shows what power they actually hold over people.
Yeah.
Yep.
Does anyone know what after multiple viewings? I have no idea why. Did she drug Feyd-Rautha? He's like gets all like wobbly.
using her mind
She
powers.
she uses the voice on him, and this mind manipulation that the Bene Gesserits can do. Yeah.
Okay, so it's
Yeah.
the
So
voice.
in the end, he
What's
hasn't
going
even
on
a clue anymore in what room he is and what's happening, and no. So yeah.
There were a
'Cause they're not
couple
like
of
psychic, but like they have the voice, which is
there were a couple of things in the movie where I was like, are they suggesting that the Bene Gesserit are actually psychic? Because like
I mean,
right at
yeah,
the
Jessica-
end,
yeah.
the
yeah.
Reverend Mother and Jessica are like talking to each other, but their lips aren't moving.
Right.
And I was like, what?
I think
What-
they're
what is it-
telepathic, not necessarily psychic, but
Yeah,
they
but
have
that's
a
it, they're
form of
not.
telepathy going on.
They're totally not telepathic though.
Actually, she's a ventriloquist.
So Jessica had her hand up
Yeah.
the Reverend Mother's ass. Is that what you're saying?
I think you could, because it only happens that one time. I think maybe you could interpret it as like they just can like read each other's intentions.
They're
and
reading
it's
facial
externalized.
expressions and
Yeah. But
Mm.
it's definitely not
Hand
made. It makes it seem like they're psychic, and they're definitely not psychic in the book.
No, no.
so
And I mean,
yeah,
nowhere else in the movies are they psychic.
No,
Like
yeah.
if they were psychic, we would have seen it. And then all the way at the end of the second movie, we've got a psychic scene, kind of,
Yeah.
or a psychic
That was
semen
strange.
scene. You know. Yeah,
But
I guess
is it
it's
what
just-
Matt said from the chat that they can read very minute body signals, right? Maybe
Yeah.
that's how they were communicating.
Right.
that was kind of how I chose to read it. But I mean, and that fits with a lot of the descriptions in the books as well. That like they know what you're thinking just by your slightest expressions and body posture and that kind of thing.
I almost wish that they, instead of doing the full telepathic thing, they like look, again, we're going with the interpretation that's not literal telepathy, but like they did the hand signals thing, just to make, because we see it. Like Jessica uses it throughout both movies.
Right.
So that was right there for them to do, but they didn't
Yeah.
do it for whatever. I guess they really wanted to hear the actresses' voices.
That whole bit just like that happened, and I was like, what is going on here?
They're going.
It seemed very
full
strange to me.
setup.
Yeah, I mean, if they had said that the Bene Gesserit are somehow telepathic, I could have dealt with that if it was in the rest of the two movies somewhere, maybe.
Right, Matt. Yeah, there is a lot of stuff in Dune, I will say, that's like like you're really pressing the soft sci-fi, where like they're doing some like magic-y stuff, but it's supposed
it's
to be
magic,
like
yeah.
there's supposed to be a
fantasy.
scientific explanation.
It's
Like,
fantasy. Yeah.
I've called Dune fantasy for a long time.
Yeah.
Like it is the most fantasy sci-fi novel I know.
Yeah.
Like people who are like, no, it's only sci-fi. I'm like, you are not paying attention. There is so much magic in this. Explain to me with science how the Bene Gesserit do everything they do. Like with their minds, Bene Gesserit women can decide what sex their child's going to be.
Yeah.
Right.
They change their own biology.
Yeah. And I mean, they do. Like, they do.
Right.
But it's not science. I mean, there's very little science. And also, I was really struck by that on this reread. Herbert goes to the absolute minimum effort he has to describe anything technological. Like all of the tech in the whole book is very background. He doesn't get into how anything works. He doesn't get into detailed descriptions of anything. It's just, it's there and it does this. And that's it. It's extremely soft sci-fi and it's basically magic.
It's using the Force without the midichlorians.
Yeah.
God, the midichlorians. In my Star Wars universe, midichlorians don't exist.
Agreed.
Jedis are magic.
Yeah, 100%.
Agreed.
Yeah. Is this it? Have we mentioned everything we need to mention, want to mention?
Yeah.
Got it all out, I think. Yeah.
Yeah. Because then I would say, thank you, everybody. And thank you for the people in the stream as well. And
Thank you.
Thanks
Thank you, Angie.